Hey everyone, just a heads up, today's video is going to be a little bit different than usual. I've had some unexpected personal stuff going on over the last few days. Don't worry, I'm alright, or at least I will be alright. But suffice it to say, this was pretty sudden and I just needed a couple of days to kind of step away from anything work-related. We should be fully back on track next week, but in the meantime, Luke and I didn't want to leave you all with nothing, so we still managed to put a little something together. Today, we're going to be covering 5 true crime stories on a single theme. Full disclosure, these stories are from previous videos, but we've never done any of them on camera before, and they've all been completely re-edited. Oh yeah, and as for today's theme, it's the crimes were fake, the consequences were real. As always, my name is Nigel, I run this channel with my good friend Luke, and welcome back to Crime Zone. A reminder, if you do find today's video interesting and informative, be sure to like and subscribe for more true crime stories told with a mysterious and suspenseful vibe. With that out of the way, let's dive in. In the spring of 2003, it seemed like Darlene Heatherington had it all. The 39-year-old was serving as a rookie alderman on the city council of Lethbridge, Alberta, and looked as though she had big plans for her future political career. She and her husband of 17 years, deputy firefighter David Heatherington, had 3 healthy young children, and by all accounts were happily married. However, in just a few short days at the beginning of May, Dar's seemingly perfect life would be completely thrown into disarray, leading to a bizarre and sensational story that would last for more than 2 years. It began when Dar and some of her fellow city officials went on a trip across the border to Great Falls, Montana, as part of a delegation. The trip was only supposed to last a couple of days, during which time Dar and her colleagues would be given a tour of the city and would meet with local officials to discuss a range of topics. Given the relative proximity of Lethbridge and Great Falls, Dar was one of several city officials that chose to drive, making the roughly 3-hour trip in a car that she rented for the occasion. She and the rest of the delegation arrived on Thursday, May 1st, and by the next afternoon, things had mostly wrapped up. Though most of her colleagues left that same Friday afternoon, Dar decided to stay behind, scheduling another meeting with the Great Falls officials for the following day, during which part of her time would be spent touring one of the city's museums. However, by the next morning, it seemed that Dar had had an abrupt change of heart. At 10 a.m., she called and left a message canceling her visit with the Great Falls officials. This happened an hour after she had already called her husband to let him know that she would be home later than originally planned, and would miss her daughter's piano recital. Later that morning, Dar went to a pawn shop and purchased a used bicycle, telling employees she planned to explore some of the scenic trails in Great Falls that run along the banks of the Missouri River. She also did some shopping and bought gifts for her 3 children. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, until Dar failed to return home from Great Falls that evening. After hours of unsuccessful attempts to reach her, David reported her missing just after midnight. The next afternoon, Dar's rental car was found abandoned in the parking lot of the Great Falls Civic Center. Inside, police found shopping bags, several articles of clothing, and Dar's purse. The keys were found underneath the vehicle. Authorities announced that the disappearance was suspicious, but that they could neither confirm nor rule out the possibility of foul play. Meanwhile, searchers combed the area, aided by a helicopter and boat that scoured the shoreline of the Missouri River. Though everyone was hoping to find Dar alive, no one was prepared for what happened next. At approximately 10:30 p.m. on May 6th, police in Las Vegas, Nevada, received a call about a distraught woman at the Treasure Island Hotel and Casino. The woman wasn't a guest at the hotel and was acting suspiciously. When police arrived, they soon learned that the mysterious woman was Dar Heatherington, who had gone missing more than 1,000 miles away just 3 days earlier. It didn't take long for Dar to offer a chilling explanation for where she had been these past few days. She told police that she had been kidnapped, drugged, and sexually assaulted multiple times. Though Dar said she wanted to press charges, Las Vegas police officers were unable to obtain almost any additional information from her. At first, she said she couldn't remember anything about the last 3 days, and then she said she was too tired from her ordeal and couldn't speak to police. In order to preserve any possible evidence from her assault, Dar was taken to a hospital where she likewise proved uncooperative. As a result, a thorough examination of her alleged injuries was never able to be completed, although several sources reported that she appeared to be in good physical health. Dar's mysterious behavior only continued when she quickly left Las Vegas and flew back to Great Falls without ever going back and talking to the police. Things only got more confusing when, on May 8th, it was reported to the public that authorities in Great Falls had charged Dar with giving false information to a police officer. It turned out that after she had flown back from Las Vegas, Dar had been interviewed by Great Falls police, who found her story of abduction suspicious. Police would later say that during their interview, Dar had initially told them what she told officers in Las Vegas, that she was riding her bike and that she had been abducted, drugged, and assaulted by an unknown man. However, as they asked for further details, Dar began to contradict herself, and her story began to collapse. According to Great Falls police, Dar eventually confessed that she had lied about the circumstances surrounding her kidnapping, and told them that she had met a married man while on her trip who happened to be from Alberta. She said she agreed to accompany the man to California, but still insisted that at some point during the journey, he had assaulted her. Authorities didn't buy either of these stories and said that they believed that Dar was actually having an affair. For her part, Dar quickly recanted any confessions that she had made and instead alleged that the information she had given to Great Falls police had been coerced. She said that she was exhausted during the interview and simply told investigators what they wanted to hear. However, with a confession in hand and mounting evidence of Dar's suspicious behavior, public opinion quickly sided with the police. By this point, the story had made headlines across Canada and the US, and many people in both Lethbridge and Great Falls felt that they had been taken advantage of. This sentiment only grew when media reported that the Great Falls Police Department had spent an estimated $15,000 on the search effort for Dar. Dar's biggest supporter was her husband David, who seemed to almost take both sides of the issue. He said that he believed his wife's initial disappearance was due to an emotional break from stress at work, but said he really did think something awful had happened to her. He cited bruising that he had seen on Dar's body in the immediate aftermath of her discovery in Las Vegas. However, these claims were never substantiated. Believing that Dar's fabricated kidnapping was due to a mental health issue and not due to malice, prosecutors in Great Falls offered her a plea deal. The charge of providing false information to police would be dismissed as long as Dar agreed to stay out of legal trouble for a year and showed proof that she was seeking psychiatric help. Dar agreed to the conditions and signed the deal at the end of May. With the case in the US now settled, Dar returned to Lethbridge, where she was quickly met with many angry calls to step down from her position as alderman. She refused, initially saying that she would try to obtain a leave of absence before withdrawing her request and continuing to serve on the city council. Though it was clear that the controversy surrounding Dar was far from over, an unexpected bombshell dropped just weeks later, when on June 10th, police in Lethbridge announced that they were also charging her with public mischief. Authorities soon revealed that the charge was the result of an investigation they had been conducting into allegations that Dar was being stalked. Just like with the kidnapping in Great Falls, police said they now had reason to believe the stalking accusations were likewise fabricated. Police had first been contacted by Dar months before the Great Falls incident, in late October of 2002. After she claimed that she had received several disturbing messages from an unknown man at her office in City Hall. Dar told authorities that the messages had started out simply complimenting her, but had transitioned into obsessive and lewd comments about her body. Shortly after that, Dar reported to police that the same unknown stalker had sent her a series of typewritten letters which had appeared at her house. Lethbridge police claimed that they had been suspicious of Dar's stalking claims before the incident in Great Falls had happened, and that the fabricated kidnapping had only raised suspicions further. Of particular interest to them was the timing. The night before Dar left for the trip, police had asked her to take a polygraph test about the stalking letters and had asked her to hand over her computer. Dar was reportedly not happy about either of these things. In her first public statement shortly after the charges were laid, Dar doubled down, saying that there was nothing wrong with her mental state, and repeated claims that her confessions in the Great Falls investigation had been coerced. She said that she stuck by her original kidnapping story and that everything that had been reported about her had been built on misquotes and outright lies. At Dar's trial in early 2004, the full extent of the police investigation against her was revealed. The public learned that to try and catch the supposed stalker, undercover officers had followed the Heatheringtons for months, and cameras had been placed on their property. These tactics had been utilized before Dar was ever a suspect, but had ended up incriminating her in the eyes of investigators. In one instance, Dar told authorities that one of the letters had been delivered to the back door of her home, only to change her story when she learned that there was a camera placed there that she didn't know about. Once Dar was informed about the camera, she said that she had instead found the letter on the windshield of her car. Dar had also been seen at the public library reading several books about stalkers and serial killers. A direct quote from one of these books later appeared in one of the letters that Dar allegedly received from her unknown stalker. But by far the most damning evidence came from Dar's own husband, David, who had reached out to police with concerns in the early months of their investigation in January of 2003. David had told police he wasn't sure if his wife was telling the truth about the stalker and suspected that she might be having an affair because of recent changes in her behavior. This included buying several new pieces of lingerie, which was out of character for her. David also provided police with a disc that he claimed he found in Dar's possession, which contained electronic copies of several typewritten letters that had allegedly come from Dar's computer and Palm Pilot. Some of the letters were similar to those she'd received from the unknown stalker, while at least 3 were exact matches. Importantly, they had spelling errors that David knew his wife frequently made. Dar's defense team argued that the evidence police provided did not actually prove that Dar had written the letters, only that they might have come from her computer. They pointed the finger at David and said that he had been motivated to fabricate the stalking of his wife because he was jealous of her career prospects and had recently been passed over for a promotion. On June 29, 2004, the judge presiding over the case sided with the prosecution, convicting Dar Heatherington of the public mischief charge. In his decision, he said that Dar could not be trusted to tell the truth, and explained that evidence like the direct quote from the library book Dar was reading was too convincing to be overlooked as a simple coincidence. Though the conviction was enough to get Dar kicked off the city council, she initially refused to step down, forcing the council to start the process of having her legally removed. Dar finally resigned in August of 2004, saying that she would continue to fight to clear her name. On September 10th, she was given a 20-month conditional sentence consisting of 8 months of house arrest, followed by 10 months of curfew and 100 hours of community service and counseling. Dar was never able to appeal her conviction, but she did win an appeal of her sentence in November of 2005. Her sentence was cut from 20 months to a year, and Dar Heatherington was declared a free woman a month later. Though many still feel that Dar got off easy for her crimes, by the time of her release it was reported that both she and her husband David had declared bankruptcy. This was reportedly due to a combination of strain on their family income and Dar's constant court battles. We were unable to find any information about what has become of Dar in the years since. However, we imagine that after her prolonged time in the spotlight, she was likely more than happy to fade into obscurity. On March 22, 2005, a 39-year-old woman named Anna Ayala went to a Wendy's fast food restaurant in San Jose, California, with her husband, Jamie Plasencia. She placed her order, which included a side of chili, and sat down at one of the location's tables. A few bites in, however, she would recoil in disgust and begin to cause a commotion. Inside her order of chili was the 1.5-inch long tip of a severed human finger. The story immediately blew up across the US, with Anna quickly making appearances on news programs to share her horrifying experience. After nonchalantly crumbling her crackers into the side dish, she said, quote, "Suddenly, I chew something that's kind of hard, crunchy. I spit it out. At first, I wasn't sure what it was. We started investigating and poking it. Other people, too. That's when we find there's something that looks like a nail." Understandably, most members of the public initially took Anna's side. After all, the thought of this alone is just gross, and a year earlier, a similar story had broken out about a finger in a salad at the family chain restaurant Applebee's. Wendy's quickly became the butt of every late-night talk show. The case went absolutely viral. Just for reference, I was in middle school in Canada at the time, and I still remember this story being everywhere. As you might imagine, the scandal hit Wendy's pretty hard, with restaurants everywhere, but especially in the San Francisco Bay Area, reportedly taking a noticeable hit to their sales. The company, of course, took the issue seriously, but were also at a loss to figure out how this had happened. They said that no one at the restaurant where the incident had happened had been injured, nor had anyone along the entire supply chain that would have been involved in the handling or preparation of their chili. Despite this, people weren't exactly eager to hear their side of the story, and things got even worse when reports were released announcing that Anna and her husband had hired a lawyer and were filing a lawsuit against Wendy's. However, as police started to look a little further into the case, they began to notice some red flags. For starters, it turned out that Anna had a history when it came to filing lawsuits. In fact, according to sources we came across, she had filed at least 13 civil actions in California and Nevada alone at the time. These cases were all over the place, from a harassment case against a boss in 1998 to a 2004 case about a malfunctioning wheel on her car, to a suit against another fast food chain where she claimed her daughter had contracted salmonella. It's not clear how all of these cases turned out, but from the reports we came across, it seemed that many of these suits were subsequently dropped or dismissed. Then there was the finger itself. Despite Anna claiming she had found it in her food, tests apparently revealed that the finger had not actually been bitten into and did not show signs of having been cooked at a temperature and duration consistent with the chili. Soon after, the final piece of the puzzle, or should I say finger, fell into place when Wendy's offered a $100,000 reward for information leading to where the digit had come from. It turned out it had come from a co-worker of Anna's husband Jamie, a man named Paul Rossiter. Rossiter had lost the fingertip in an industrial accident and had sold it to Anna and Jamie for $100. According to reports, the reward was subsequently split between two people, a man who was the president of the company where Rossiter and Jamie worked, as well as another anonymous recipient. It's long been speculated, though, that this second person was Rossiter himself. As for Anna and Jamie, they were both arrested. Anna was taken into custody at her home in Las Vegas in late April, while Jamie was arrested about a month later. They were each charged with conspiracy to file a false insurance claim and attempted grand theft. Each of them were also slapped with additional charges for crimes unrelated to the Wendy's case. Though Anna and Jamie both ultimately pled guilty to these charges, given the public panic that the case caused and the reputational damage that had been done to Wendy's as a result of the hoax, prosecutors asked for a harsh penalty for the couple. This was delivered in January of 2006, with Anna getting 9 years and Jamie getting 12 years and 4 months. It's important to note, though, that the charges unrelated to the Wendy's case also played a factor here, as Anna also pleaded guilty to defrauding a woman in the sale of a motorhome, and Jamie pleaded guilty to failing to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in child support to multiple women, and also stealing his son's identity to avoid having his wages garnished. In addition to all of this, the couple were ordered to pay $21.2 million in restitution to Wendy's International for the estimated damages to the brand, nearly $500,000 to a company called JEM Management, which owned the actual store where the incident happened, as well as more than $170,000 to Wendy's employees, many of whom lost wages due to hour cuts when the hoax affected the restaurant's sales. Though Anna apparently got out of jail after serving only 4 years, according to reports we came across, she was sent back to prison for 2 years in 2013 after she once again lied to police in a case where her son accidentally shot himself in the ankle but was not supposed to be in possession of a firearm because he was on parole for a felony burglary conviction. As one final bizarre note about this whole situation in general, while the Wendy's finger incident turned out to be a hoax, it appears that the Applebee's one was actually real. Not only that, but it allegedly happened again in 2016, according to various news outlets. So yeah, I guess just be careful out there, folks. Way before anyone had ever heard the name Sherry Papini, there was another woman whose disappearance would make her a household name, at first earning her the concern and then the outrage of people across the United States. It all started on April 26, 2005, when 32-year-old Jennifer Carol Wilbanks went out for her usual evening jog in Duluth, Georgia, and didn't come back. After about 2 hours, Jennifer's fiancé, John Mason, began to get extremely worried and called police. Officers asked if there was any reason that Jennifer might have left of her own volition, to which John and Jennifer's family replied, "No way. This wasn't like Jennifer at all, and besides, she was supposed to get married in just 4 days. It was going to be a lavish affair with over 600 guests and 28 members in the bridal party alone." By the following day, a search team of roughly 250 people, comprised of police and volunteers, were combing the area looking for Jennifer. As word about the disappearance started to get out through media reports, tips began coming in. Large clumps of dark brown hair were found in an area near a local retention pond, and investigators were being bombarded with reports about random articles of clothing that might belong to Jennifer, as well as items that could be possible murder weapons. Details like these fueled the media frenzy, and soon the case had turned into a national news story. On April 28th, representatives from the Duluth Police Department announced that in light of no other explanations, Jennifer's disappearance was now being handled as a criminal investigation, and that the FBI and Georgia Bureau of Investigation were going to be brought in to assist with the case. Understandably, this came as a terrifying revelation to Jennifer's fiancé and family members, who the following day offered a $100,000 reward and pleaded for her safe return. They also announced that a vigil was going to be held at the same church where the 32-year-old had been scheduled to get married. Then, either later on April 29th or the 30th, sources contradict each other about the exact date, John Mason received a telephone call out of the blue from Jennifer. She was calling from a payphone in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and appeared to be in a terrified state. She said that she had been kidnapped but had just been released. She would then go on to make a similarly frantic 911 call, stating that she didn't know where she was. After being safely picked up by police, Jennifer was questioned by the FBI and proceeded to tell a harrowing story. She said that on the evening that she had gone out for her jog, she had been abducted by an armed man and woman driving a blue van. She described the couple as being in their 40s, a heavy-set white woman and a Hispanic man with bad teeth. She said the two had tied her up and repeatedly violated her in the van. She was able to describe the vehicle in detail and said that Spanish music had been playing on the radio throughout her ordeal. Despite the, let's say, colorful details of Jennifer's story, as the interview continued and more questions were asked, her version of events started to fall apart. Eventually, she cracked, admitting that she had made the whole thing up. In reality, on the night of her so-called abduction, Jennifer had withdrawn $40 from her checking account, taken a taxi to the local Greyhound terminal, and hopped on a bus out of town. She had first traveled to Las Vegas before continuing on to Albuquerque. As an explanation for her actions, Jennifer said that she had run away to escape the pressures of her wedding. When the truth about what had happened was revealed to the public, the media circus around the case only grew. Dozens of reporters and camera crews showed up to capture shots of the 32-year-old being led through the Albuquerque International Airport, while Jennifer covered her head with some sort of striped blanket or towel. The lampooning that followed was equally well documented. An updated missing persons billboard for Jennifer was made with a graphic that said, "Case solved, cold feet." An eBay auction featuring a slice of toast poorly carved with Jennifer's likeness sold for over $15,000. And an action figure company made a figure of Jennifer, which came complete with jogging pants and a t-shirt that said "Vegas Baby" written on it, as well as a scaled-down version of the striped blanket she had used to cover her face at the airport. It wasn't all fun and games, though, particularly for Jennifer's friends, family, and fiancé. Not to mention the city of Duluth, Georgia, or the local police department. All in, they estimated that they had spent somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000 on the search for Jennifer. Shortly after her return to Georgia, Jennifer checked herself into an inpatient treatment facility to address, quote, physical and mental issues, which she believed played a major role in her running from herself. She would eventually plead no contest to a felony count of providing false information to law enforcement and would receive 2 years of probation and 120 hours of community service instead of jail time due to a plea bargain. As part of the deal, she also reportedly agreed to pay about $13,000 back to the city of Duluth. as well as a little over $2,500 to the local police department to help cover the cost of the search. Amazingly, even after all of this, Jennifer's fiancé, John Mason, would initially stick by her. However, about a year later, it was reported that they were done for good. Things turned pretty sour a few months after that when both filed lawsuits against each other, but these were eventually dropped near the end of 2006. Jennifer would go on to actually get married a few months later, though news eventually broke that she got divorced after 11 years. John, meanwhile, would marry in 2008, and as far as we can tell, is still with his wife to this day. It appears he learned a thing or two from his first go-around, though, as the 2008 wedding was described as a small, quiet ceremony at his parents' house. On the evening of June 16th, 1993, 30-year-old Catherine Kitty Wuerhl was in the midst of her usual dinner break in the employee lounge at work. Deciding she wanted a drink, she grabbed a can of Pepsi that she had brought with her that day, filled up a cup with ice, and cracked open the can. She had just started to pour the fizzy cola into her cup when, out of nowhere, her coworkers heard her yell out in surprise. She screamed, "What the hell is that?" while throwing the can back onto the table. Immediately, several people gathered around to see what was wrong. As the can was picked up, something momentarily appeared to float to the surface. When the rest of the soft drink was emptied out, there was indeed something still rattling around inside the can. To everyone's horror, it turned out to be a hypodermic syringe. While the finding was quite sickening, unfortunately, it was hardly the surprise that it should have been for those in the room at the time. For about a week, people had been reporting foreign objects in Pepsi cans all over the US. Everything from screws to a bullet, a vial of crack cocaine, and a mysterious glob of dark brown goo. In fact, not only was this syringe not the first one found, needles of all varieties seemed to be the most common objects that many worried consumers were discovering in their Pepsis. By this time, Kitty was just one of at least 50 people across more than 20 states. What made Kitty's situation unique, however, other than the purported 7 people who had witnessed her crack the contaminated soft drink, was where she worked. She was in the telemarketing department at the Journal-Sentinel, the parent company of the newspapers The Milwaukee Journal and the Milwaukee Sentinel. As it happened, the person who picked up Kitty's can of Pepsi after she threw it in disgust was a reporter and editor at the Sentinel named James Causey. Naturally, the paper took advantage of the viral story which had seemingly landed in their lap and printed it on the front page of the following morning's paper. The article featured a first-hand written account from Kitty Wuerhl, describing the situation and her reaction. She led with the line, "I still can't believe it." Little did she know that pretty soon no one else would either. You see, while Kitty continued to repeat her story for the next day and a half to any media outlet that would listen, significantly amplifying the Pepsi-related panic in the process, it turned out that both the FDA and the FBI were also tuning in intently. In fact, they had been investigating all of the numerous claims about foreign objects found in cans of Pepsi, and one by one, each was being revealed to be a hoax. If you're a regular viewer of the channel, then you'll probably know that we've covered several other product tampering cases like this in the past. You'll likely also remember that aside from mass public panic, almost all of these cases tend to generate copycat offenders. And this is precisely what happened here. Only in this case, not even the inciting incident was real. Apparently, the person who launched the scare was an 82-year-old retired meat salesman in Tacoma, Washington, who said that he and his wife had found a syringe in a can of Diet Pepsi 7 days earlier while looking for a prize-winning phrase for part of a contest that the soft drink company was running at the time. Just in case you were wondering, the winning phrase was "Be young, have fun, drink Pepsi." Though, given what happened here, you'd be forgiven for thinking it was "Pretend there's a needle in here, call the media." As news began to emerge that all of the foreign object claims were systematically being disproven by the FDA and the FBI, Kitty initially held firm that her account was true. She even said that she was mulling over filing a liability suit against the cola company and had been experiencing emotional distress, vomiting, and sleeplessness since the incident had happened. However, it wasn't long before her claims also fell apart. The first little thread to unravel came from a Kmart employee who worked at the store in the Milwaukee suburb where Kitty claimed she had purchased her Pepsi. The employee said that they knew Kitty, but they hadn't seen her at all that day, despite being near the store's Pepsi machine for the majority of their shift. Next, other Milwaukee media outlets uncovered the fact that this wasn't Kitty's first rodeo, so to speak, when it came to personal injury claims. She had, in fact, made a number of claims over the years, most of which apparently had to do with her knees. In one case, she said that she hurt her left knee falling down a flight of steps. In another, she said she hurt her right knee when she had slipped in some water in a women's bathroom at a city convention center. In yet another account, she claimed that she had re-injured the left knee while riding in a taxi that was struck by lightning. When investigators started talking to employees at Kitty's workplace, even more damning information came out. Those in the room with her at the time that the syringe was discovered now said that they hadn't actually seen Kitty open her can of Pepsi. They'd only heard her open it before witnessing her reaction a few moments later. As if all of this weren't enough, Kitty was well and truly busted when two final pieces of evidence were uncovered. A janitor at her office building found the wrapper for a syringe in the women's washroom, and the eye doctor that Kitty had visited just the day before making her Pepsi claim said that he was missing one of those exact syringes from his office. Finally, during a more than 5-hour questioning session, Kitty confessed that she had made the whole thing up. Her lawyer would later state that she had done it in the hopes of getting attention from her coworkers, and that it had quickly spiraled out of control, and that she hadn't known how to resolve the situation and still save face. While Kitty hadn't technically started the whole Pepsi panic, considering that she had helped to amplify it significantly through her job at the Journal-Sentinel, authorities decided to bring charges against her. That being said, it wasn't like she was completely singled out either, though, as reports state that close to 40 other people were charged because of false claims they made as well. Speaking of the Journal-Sentinel, it was a bit of an embarrassing situation for them. As while the Sentinel printed the original story from Kitty, it was journalists from the Journal that apparently printed one of the first articles debunking her claims. Essentially, it was a case of reporters in the same building calling out their own coworkers' shoddy journalism. Kitty was fired from the company shortly after admitting to making her story up. As for the legal consequences for her actions, Kitty pleaded guilty to a federal charge of making a false statement and was sentenced to 1 year and a day in prison. She was also ordered to write a letter of apology to Pepsi and pay $5,000 in restitution. As a result of the entire scare, Pepsi calculated that it had lost roughly $40 million in sales. For citizens and tourists alike, the allure of Australia's far north Queensland region is easy to understand. The area is home to 3 World Heritage Sites, including the Great Barrier Reef and the wet tropics of Queensland, each of which draws thousands of yearly visitors eager to witness the one-of-a-kind, breathtaking views. Further north is a chain of over 200 tropical islands scattered throughout the Torres Strait, leading all the way up to Papua New Guinea. Though the region does see large population fluctuations during tourist season, especially in coastal towns like Port Douglas, outside of the main hub city of Cairns, many places in the far north are renowned for their remoteness and isolation. Like any region known for its relative seclusion, it can be easy to get lost if you're not careful, and people do go missing. In December of 2010, one such incident took place that would simultaneously confuse and intrigue investigators, when a 55-year-old American tourist disappeared while on a kayaking trip. The man's name was Kenneth Rodman, and it would take nearly 5 years to learn the truth about what had happened to him. Months before Kenneth ever made headlines in Australia, he was living what by all accounts was a completely normal life in California. While there wasn't a ton of information we could find about his personal life, what we do know is that he held jobs as a construction worker and special effects designer, and that he was divorced from his former wife, Corey Hallmark. The two had a 9-year-old daughter together. Though we don't know much about the family's relationship, it appears that Kenneth was still in his daughter and ex-wife's lives, as his wife would later tell police that she had been to his house several times in the months leading up to his disappearance. Reports give different accounts about why Kenneth decided to take his trip to Australia in the fall of 2010. Many sources state that he was simply on vacation, while his ex-wife Corey alleged that he told her he was seeking help for some kind of illness. Based on statements that Corey gave to the media, it appears that Kenneth never fully shared the details of his mysterious condition, but nonetheless claimed that it was serious and that Australia was where he would be able to receive an alternative treatment. When Kenneth arrived in the country, he stayed with friends in Malbury, just south of Port Douglas. For most of the trip, everything appeared to be fine. That was until he decided to set out for an extended kayaking trip on December 21st. On that day, Kenneth was seen heading towards a local beach with his green kayak. He told his friends that he planned to travel approximately 200 kilometers south, ultimately ending up in the sleepy seaside village of Cardwell. After that, he disappeared. When Kenneth failed to report back to both his friends in Australia and his family in the US, many people started to worry. The friend whose house he had been staying at decided to alert the police, and an investigation into the 55-year-old's disappearance soon began. Authorities learned that Kenneth had last been seen in his kayak on Christmas Day, 4 days after he left his friend's place in Malbury. However, witnesses hadn't been sure which direction he had been traveling in. Pleas were made to the public regarding Kenneth's disappearance, and his name and photo began appearing in various newspapers and media reports. A particular concern was the fact that the area where Kenneth was kayaking was known for its crocodile-infested estuaries. In the height of Australia's summer, when he went missing, the ocean's waters were also filled with deadly box jellyfish. Though friends and family tried not to fear the worst, this proved extremely difficult when only a month later, Kenneth's green kayak was found capsized off the coast of Wangeti Beach, just 17 kilometers from where he had first departed for his trip. Though no trace of Kenneth's body was found, it was seen as a grim omen. The idea that Kenneth had succumbed to either the wildlife or the elements seemed to track with the fact that few additional details could be uncovered about his disappearance. Kenneth's ex-wife Corey would later describe the distressing period immediately following the disappearance, as she and her bereaved family and friends tried to stay on top of any new information in the case. She said that for months she spoke almost daily with her ex-husband's friends in Australia and in the US, as well as with authorities in both countries, but eventually those calls became less and less frequent. One of the people who similarly found themselves unable to put the case out of their mind was Senior Sergeant Ed Lucan. He was the officer in charge at the Mossman police station where the initial report of Kenneth's disappearance was made, and was involved in the search and investigation. Like many people, Lucan had no idea what to make of the case, but hoped that despite the unsettling circumstances concerning the recovery of Kenneth's kayak, that authorities might still be able to find him alive. There were a couple of reasons to think that this might be the case. First of all, there were several reported sightings of Kenneth after police released appeals to the public. These sightings were from all over and included places further south like Ingham, Airlie Beach, and Sydney, but also included sightings as far away as the Northern Territory and even Western Australia. Though none of the sightings could be confirmed, and false leads are common in missing persons investigations, as long as tips continued to come in, it seemed that there was reason to hold out hope. The second major reason that Lucan thought Kenneth could be alive had to do with his kayak. When it was recovered in January of 2011 from Wangeti Beach, investigators noticed that the plugs on it had been removed, suggesting it might have been intentionally capsized. Despite any suspicions Lucan might have had, no concrete evidence in Kenneth's disappearance case emerged. Months passed, then years, and Lucan was eventually transferred to a different police station outside of Cairns, left only to wonder about what might have happened to Kenneth Rodman. While it wouldn't be revealed until much later, Corey began to have suspicions of her own about her ex's disappearance, though in the immediate aftermath she had been understandably overwhelmed by the situation. As more time passed, certain pieces started to click into place. She remembered that in the months before Kenneth went on his trip, she had noticed strange searches on his home computer on topics such as how to hide money offshore. She also recalled strange comments Kenneth had made to her that reportedly took on new significance in the aftermath of his sudden disappearance. Again, though, these were merely suspicions. That all changed at the end of June of 2015, though, when things took an extremely bizarre turn. It began when police in the Cairns suburb of Smithfield got a call about a break and enter late on the night of June 27th. While they were attending to that call, a second call came in about another break-in. At approximately 2 a.m., while they were investigating the second report, a suspicious-looking man rode past on a bicycle. Believing that this might be the culprit they were looking for, officers yelled for the man to stop so that they could question him. As soon as they called out to him, the man took off. Luckily for Smithfield police, they had called for the assistance of the Cairns Police Dog Squad, who were able to follow the man's scent. They tracked him through James Cook University across to the campus shopping center, where they found the man's discarded backpack and bike. Despite his effort to take off on foot, one of the police dogs, named Xander, was able to pick up on the man's trail again and lead officers into some thick brush where the man was found hiding in a creek bed. He was then taken into custody. When police brought the man back to the station and questioned him, he made a shocking confession. He was Kenneth Rodman, the now 60-year-old missing American tourist who had disappeared nearly 5 years earlier. Coincidentally, it turned out that he had nothing to do with either of the two break-ins that had been reported that night. He just happened to be riding his bike past the area at the unluckiest possible moment. In a further twist almost too ridiculous to believe, it also turned out that Smithfield was where Senior Sergeant Ed Lucan had been transferred to after leaving his previous station. While officers were able to establish that Kenneth was a missing person, it wasn't until Lucan arrived at work that morning that the full scope of the crazy story was uncovered. While Kenneth was apparently never forthcoming with authorities about exactly why he chose to fake his disappearance, it's been speculated that he simply wanted to start a new life in Australia. The time that he went missing was close to the expiry of his tourist visa, meaning he would have needed to leave the country, so he likely felt disappearing was his best option. According to his wife, he also owed more than $50,000 in unpaid child support for their daughter, another reason he might have been keen to leave his old life in America behind. While those certainly seem like reasonable conclusions to make, there are some mysteries that still linger in the case, particularly how Kenneth was able to support himself while on the run. Police theorize that he likely had help from friends, though as far as we can tell, this was never actually proven. At the time that Kenneth was arrested, he had well overstayed his visa and was transferred over to the custody of Australia's Department of Immigration and Border Protection before being deported to the United States. Unfortunately, this is the last real information we could find about Kenneth Rodman. In an article around the time of his capture, his ex-wife told Australian media that she worried for her and her daughter's safety because of the money that Kenneth owed them, and hoped that authorities in the US would hold him legally responsible for what he had done. However, it appears that no updates have since been given about the case. Hey there. Before you take off, we'd just like to take a second and say that we really appreciate you sticking around to the end of the video. Luke and I are so grateful for our incredible Crime Zone community, so thank you for being a part of it. If you want to help Crime Zone continue to grow, one of the easiest things you can do is leave a like on this video and consider subscribing. Be sure to hit that notification bell as well and select all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to support the channel, there are a couple of options. We've got a thriving community over on Patreon, where you can get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. Head over to patreon.com/crimezone to learn more and to meet some of the awesome people whose names are currently on screen. If that isn't your thing, we've also now launched channel memberships so you can join directly here on YouTube. Channel members get a lot of the same perks as on Patreon, including extra content, without the added hassle of having to go off-platform. Now, that being said, we know times are tough and that not everyone is able to support financially. Regardless of your situation though, we want you to know that we truly appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much, and we hope to see you soon.